Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Some of you have been here for a few days. Some of you are just joining us today. I know it's a time commitment no matter how much you're here away from your work, so I always want to acknowledge that and tell you how much we appreciate it. So what we're going to do first is go around the room. Everyone's going to introduce themselves with name, please, where you're from, and then something significant, that one short significant thing that's happened to you in the last year, either personally or with your work, whatever that you'd like to share. So I'm Jane Burns. I'm located in Madison, Wisconsin, and my son moved to Dubai, and it just seems like he's really far away. So we're going to start, then we'll go this way with Nelsinia.
We need to pass the mic.
Oh, I'll do that. It's just for the recording.
Sure. Nelsinia Ramos from Facets, and I can think about like what happened last year. Besides that, I don't know. My daughter, who has a disability, has been at work for over a year now, and that's interesting. And she's starting taking classes at the technical college. So she's only 20, and now it's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that that's happening now.
So this mic is not for volume in this room. We can't tap into it. We have to videotape this, and I should explain this for the newer people. This training is required under statute. So we have to offer an alternative to people who can't make it. So Jason videotapes it for us. This is what the sound is for. And then we put it on YouTube, and then the people who aren't here can watch it, and then they have to sign an affidavit saying that they've watched it in order to maintain their place on the roster.
Thank you, Jane. I'm Nissan Barlev, Director of Special Education for CISA 7. My wife and I visited our second oldest in New Albany, Ohio, a couple of weeks ago when he was installed as the chief rabbi of a New Albany temple, only to find out that evening that they are also expecting twins. And then found out the following day that my youngest daughter, who lives with her husband in Washington, D.C., is expecting also. So we're absolutely delighted.
Lots of mazel. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today. My name is Christina Spector. I work at the Department of Public Instruction. And so I am based in Madison, Wisconsin. Native child. I've lived there the majority of my years. And something significant, I guess, with both of my children. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and my 4-year-old started 4K, which is a really big deal. I can see her on WISE data now, which is exciting if you're kind of a data nerd like I am. And then also my 7-year-old son started walking independently to and from school, which is huge because the pride that he has in that independence and freedom is priceless, even though my anxiety level is slightly high still.
So again, I'm Greg Abel. I'm from Bay Bridge Island, Washington. I have to be careful saying I'm from Seattle, Washington, because there's a group in Seattle that maybe isn't well accepted in Wisconsin. I don't know. They have this name called the Seahawks, so I have to be careful with that. Actually, the interesting thing that I got this great new job this year. It's in Wisconsin, so that's it's exciting. And a little bit of a cheat because it happened 2 years ago. Is I have an 18-month-old grandson who is the absolute joy of my life. So.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Courtney Selzer. I'm Jan 2.0, basically. I am going to be, starting October 1st, representing the parent partner on the triad that we have that helps run the system. So professionally, that's my one big thing, is that my mentor, my friend, my partner, Jan is retiring actually at the end of this week, which is why she's not here. She sends her hellos and that she's missing all of the veterans and excited about all of the new additions to the roster. But she is going to take some well-deserved time to spend with her family and her grandkids and her husband and her children. So professionally, that's my big thing, is that Jan's leaving. Personally, my oldest started middle school this year, which he struggles with some pretty significant anxiety issues. So that made me have quite a bit of anxiety about starting middle school, and he is rocking it. He is loving it and flourishing, and so that's been really, really exciting to see.
Do you need me to do this, or can the camera pick it up? It helps a lot. Okay.
Hi, I'm Diana Ryan. I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin. The biggest thing that's happened to me this year is the implementation of a project I actually developed from ground zero. So that works with the young fathers at the Racine Youthful Offender Correctional Facility during their transition from incarceration back into the community. I help them with responsible parenting, healthy relationships, and work readiness.
Hi there, I'm Jill Sofa. So I live in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, and the biggest thing that's happened to me in the last year is that my husband and I pretty much threw our whole life into chaos, and I left my full-time job where I had been for 15 years and started my own business, and he, who had been a stay-at-home dad, went back to work full-time. And so we're just starting over and figuring out everything with our professional lives and how our kids, who are 13 and 11, have adjusted has been great, but it's required them to have a little more independence as we are running off and figuring out our the second half of our professional careers.
So what are we at? The biggest thing that's happened in the last year?
Yep. Yeah, your name, where you're from, and something significant in personal or professional.
Okay. My name is Tom Yeager. I was from Sun Prairie. Now I'm from Lodi. I'm in the process of moving. I moved on Tuesday. I close on my condo tomorrow. And I was a condo president for 4 years, and that was enough to drive me out. And so now I'm living out at Lake Wisconsin starting tomorrow.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Stinsky. I live in Sherwood, Wisconsin. And probably the most significant thing that happened this year is I went on a mission trip with about 40 high school kids to Louisiana this last summer. And it was eye-opening in many different ways.
We're not going to go any further.
Hi, I'm Sue Bronson from Milwaukee, and the most significant thing for me is grandchild number 6, but it's the first girl's grandchild, and if anyone wants to see about 1,000 pictures, I have them.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carolyn Peckham. I'm from Brooklyn, Wisconsin, which is I live in a rural area that is south of Madison. So think about 30 minutes south of the Coliseum, and that's where I am. And so one of the significant things for me this year is the continuation of the Wisconsin Career Pathways Project in trying to develop a career pathways system in Wisconsin. And you all should start to hear about career pathways when you're working on transition plans in a mediation. And there should be a path from about grade 6 into, my bias, the technical college system, and then on through any degree as in a progression of an occupation.
Good. We'll have to have you talk to us about that. I'd love to.
Hi, I'm Christine Sanas, and I live in the town of Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. I have American Saddlebred show horses, and I do handicapped riding with kids with psychological and emotional problems. And I also rescue horses, and one of my rescues this year that I've been working with 3 years went to an A show and won. So I was really excited. The other exciting bit of information that I probably should have said first is I'm engaged and I'm getting married January 1st.
Congratulations.
That's my parents' anniversary.
I'm going to skip up here.
Hi, my name is Sharifa Elaraj, and I am from Minneapolis. Not originally from Minneapolis, but lived there over 2 decades. And something significant in the last year. I don't think there is anything major. I took a sabbatical about 2 years ago, which ended last year, and I'm back into the swing of things. I started a new business, and I'm hoping that it goes well, but nothing too exciting.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Guru Raj Kumar. I live in Chicago, and one thing that's significant that's occurred within the last year, I'm a new father. I have he's almost 9 months, so that's pretty significant.
I'm Bill Houlihan. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and the last of our children moved out, and Mary and I are now empty nesters for the first time in our marriage. Who is right?
Hello, I'm Danielle Karn. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. Let's see. Really, this year, everyone is just moving forward, which is a nice thing. I also went from a push mower to an electric mower, which is exciting for me. And I should say that I've been waiting for a long time to be here, so that's a big deal in my professional calendar.
Yes, I'm Jim Sands, and I'm from Dubuque, Iowa, and I retired as a director of special education from Indiana and retired back to Dubuque. And couple things of significance. One is I had a position the last 2 years in transition and had a great experience this summer with a career camp promoting career pathways. And then also I got to see a week ago today my oldest granddaughter as a cheerleader for a football game. She did great, the team lost. So, but anyhow.
Well, good morning. I'm Bill Roden from Grafton, Wisconsin, and I have twin boys. I heard twins over there. There's a big difference, though. They're 43. One is battalion fire chief in Milwaukee for the fire service, and what he's doing this year is he's designed a new fire helmet that's about to go public, so it's kind of interesting. He's a national consultant and doing very well. The other boy is in Colorado, and he's in sales and marketing, and they fight tooth and nail, long distance, and I've always done that and continue to do it even at 43, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Melody Klein, and I am from Wheaton, Illinois, Chicagoland area. And boy, one of the most exciting things that happened to me this year is that my child, who is in 5th grade, who has some learning disabilities, is actually coming home on Saturdays and saying, I wish I could go to school today. And that has been one of the most exciting things in my life. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gia Pinek Valle, and this year marks the 5th year that I've been a solo practitioner and started my practice. And so in January, I made a commitment to do an evaluation. Actually, do I still like this? Do I want to do this? Is this bringing me joy? And so it's really kind of forced me to kind of think about the pieces of work I like and that I don't like. And being here today is part of that assessment. So I'm really grateful that I made that commitment.
I'm Beverly Taylor Gladney. I reside here in Milwaukee, a native of Tennessee. The big change in my life, in September, we became guardians to a 13-year-old girl. So that's been interesting.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Moira Kelly. I live in New Berlin, which is outside of Milwaukee. The most interesting, significant thing for me this year in terms of special ed issues is that last week I concluded putting together a program for military families to walk them through how to make transitions during military moves easier for parents of children with disabilities and also parents of children who are gifted. And I did the first presentation of that out at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania, where I lived as a kid, because I'm a military kid myself, so I understand their world and I understand what's going on. And just to be able to take all of the special ed knowledge that I've learned through here and apply it to that unique sector of the community was just an absolute joy.
Hi, I'm Iman Khan. I currently reside in Shorewood, Wisconsin. This year, all 3 of my children transferred into the Shorewood School District from a Montessori school, so it was their first public school experience. And I completed my second 10-day silent retreat meditation intensive. It's not really a retreat, so don't let anybody fool you.
Good morning. My name is Michael Rust. I am in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. My biggest change this past year has been my connection to TED. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with TED Talks that you can see online. I am the license holder and organizer of TEDx Oshkosh, which is how I know Jason, because he is my lead videographer, actually. Worlds colliding. I actually gave my own TEDx talk at another TEDx, and I was invited to attend TED Fest in Brooklyn, New York, and was with 500 organizers from around the world to learn more about how to organize good TEDx events.
Just pass it down the table.
That is a hard announcement to follow up. My name's Rich Brigham. I'm from Milwaukee. I live on the east side. And what's new for me is this experience. About 6 or 7 years ago, I thought that I wanted to join, and I truly wasn't ready. I didn't have experience mediating. But since then, I have had a lot of mediation experience and been very surprised that these doors opened up, or partially opened up, for me, and I'm just having fun getting back here. It's caused me to really look at a lot of things, and I'm really enjoying meeting the people that I've been with.
I'm Renee Aldana, and we live in Shorewood, Wisconsin. We have 3 boys, so a lot of things have happened in the last year, but I think that probably the milestone that we'll remember is that our oldest turned 18, so Mike and I are now the parents of an adult. Yeah, there's that. And I'm just really happy to be here this week.
My name is Jim McGill, and I live in Hackensack, Minnesota, which is about 50 miles south of Bemidji, Minnesota. I do special ed mediations in Wisconsin and in the state of Minnesota. I think probably the most exciting event for my wife and I was that we became great-grandparents this year. And secondly, we're very thankful that our house in Florida survived.
It's tiny.
It is tiny.
Good morning. Daryl Jackson. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. And events. Retirement. I retired in February of this year. And so my retirement had three prongs to it. I retired from the state of Illinois, I retired from Cook County, and I retired from the military. So there was paperwork flying everywhere. And in October this year, I'm going on a 10-day silent retreat. I've done retreats in the past, I've done silent retreats in the past, but never 10 days. No phones, no books, no anything. So this one is going to be interesting.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Oh, right. So you guys name.
Trying to say like.
All right. So name where you're from, and then something interesting, significant that happened in your personal and professional life in the past year.
My name is Kay Vance. The interesting thing is that having sent 3 grown-up kids, and all 3 of them got a chance to spend a year abroad or 2 years abroad, I decided to pair it with me getting to spend time abroad myself. And so I'm trying to learn Spanish, and I'm going to do an immersion program by myself in Costa Rica in January.
And she's from the Milwaukee area.
Hi, I'm Gene Broxma. Rich, it's good to see you. I think we had that discussion at Sendix on the east side. You said, what about that mediation stuff? Because you were probably most significant thing for me this year is, or in the past year, is all of my grandparents immigrated from the Netherlands in their early adulthood or childhood, and I'd never been there. So my wife and I took a couple-week trip and bicycled around the Netherlands and went to the ancestral home, which has changed a little in 100 years or so, but was just a delightful trip. And the other really, really recent thing is that we're babysitting for our 2 youngest grandchildren, so I was up from 1 to 4 this morning with the 5-month-old. And I live here in Milwaukee, and we have to talk about retirement. I haven't done that yet.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So, as you know, I usually do an administrative update, but we just met in March. And I usually try to take the data that we've collected from the reporting forms and then put it into kind of a skills training or knowledge-based informational sharing. But we still have open cases from the past operating year, so I don't have any new statistical information to share. So Greg and I talked about it, and I just have a few things to share, and then he's going to come up and talk about himself and his role here on the project and get some input from you about what you're looking for and that kind of thing. So on your agenda that's in your packet, do you want to go get your packet? Okay. So I have that. It's on my list. There's the agenda. I've given you the 5-day agenda. So you could see the topics that we've been talking about with the mediator candidates. And if you want any more information about any of those, or the PowerPoint maybe that went with it, you can let me know, because we had some significant legal updates, and it might be helpful for you. There's also a resource list that we provided that has links to information that we thought would be helpful for the candidates, but it could also be helpful for all of you. And then there's something we've never passed out before, and that's Wisconsin Schools at a Glance. So it gives you like how many districts, it gives you the cultural breakdown, so that's all stapled together. And I thought that might be helpful for you too, especially since we're going to talk about culture tomorrow. It's interesting to see how culture is broken down in our school districts. No, it's with the agenda. Unless, just make sure you have it. If anything's missing, just let me know and I can get it to you. I've talked about how we're recording this. Courtney went over the fact that our longtime parent partner, Jan Sarek, is retiring. She may stop by tomorrow. I'm not sure, but if any of you want her email to send her a little note or something, just let me know. But as you know, she's been representing the parent perspective quite vehemently over the years, and now her son Ben, who has autism, is 40. So she's been advocating for him all of his life, and she's been a great partner for us. So we're going to miss her, but we have Courtney can definitely fill those big shoes of Jan's. So we're lucky to have her. And Nina isn't here. So Nina's last day of her contract was June 30th. Greg took over on July 1st. However, you may remember or not that in March, I talked a little bit about that agreement rate that Cadre released. Over the last 9 years, the national average agreement rate was 69%, but ours is 88%. Well, Nina and I talked about it, and we thought it would be a good presentation. We could expand on that and put in a proposal to speak at the Cadre conference. You may remember that stands for Consortium I just love that I can remember this. Consortium for Appropriate Dispute Resolution in Special Education. They're having a conference in Eugene, Oregon in October, and Nina and I are going to present. And one reason Nina and I are doing it, and not Greg and I, though we invited Greg and he's going to be there, is that this data that we're going to be talking about is over the 10 years that she was the mediation partner. So I actually gave a version of that presentation to the candidates, and at some point I may end up doing it when we meet again, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to let you know that Nina and I are going to be doing that and really talking about what makes our system special, that our agreement rate is 19% higher and than the national average, and does that equal that people who are using the system are satisfied with it too? So I'm excited about that because I think we have a lot to be proud of, and it does talk about a lot about self-determination in our system and how that is one of the reasons, and being able to pick all of you to be their mediators and the quality of our mediators. So yesterday we talked a lot about the agreements to mediate and facilitate, and we asked the candidate mediators to think overnight if there was any questions they had about them. So I want to just ask if you have questions that I could answer while we're together and have all these experts in the room. Or if you don't want to share as a group, you can always come up to me one-on-one as well, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. What I want to also remind you is the evaluations. This is a grant-funded project, and we use those evaluations in our grant proposals. So please remember, everybody, for the days that you're here to fill out those evaluations. They're anonymous. You can just put them face down on a table and I'll collect them. But we really need those evaluations. We take them very seriously. We take the comments seriously for future planning. So don't forget to fill those out. And you can also, whenever you're leaving for good, leave your name tags and things, because I reuse those. So I would appreciate that. And there's just one handout I have for you in your packet. It's called Literacy in Wisconsin. So as many of you may remember, and for the new people, when you fill out your mediator or IEP facilitator reporting form, there's a section that you fill out about what brought people to the table. And there's a list of options for you to choose from, and one of them is literacy. But I have noticed, since we've added it at DPI's request to track that, because that is one of their initiatives. Christine, it's under an indicator that they're focusing on literacy. And which indicator is that?
17, where we have developed a state system improvement plan, and our focus area is literacy and closing the gap between students with disabilities and students without. So one of the areas that we're measuring is how often is that a conflict area, or how often is that conflict.
But it's never been checked. So that's what this is about.
Yeah, I read it and I still don't.
Oh, great.
I would just say whenever it comes up as a major issue, like I'm concerned my child is not reading well, I'm concerned about the reading program you're using. Anytime you hear something about reading specifically, check it. When in doubt, check it. Does that help?
Yes, so that's why I gave you this, so you could understand a little more about literacy, and there's some links that you could go to in here for more information, or you can always contact me if you have questions, and I can follow up on those for you. So does anyone have any questions for me before I turn it over to Greg? Agenda.
Agenda has only one line about special ed, and it says 13.7%. So I know a number of you have asked me a bit more information on that. So looking at the DPI website, the last figure that we have would be for the 2015-16 school year, and we had 120,000 students with disabilities, which means that we had, and breaking down, if you're interested in autism, we have 11,470 students. EBD, emotional behavioral disabilities, about 12,000 students. The two largest categories, or the three largest categories, are learning disabled, almost 30,000. OHI, other health impaired, which you'll hear a lot, 21,000. And the other big category is speech and language, about 30,000. And the rest of them are just smaller figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? All right, so now I'm going to introduce Greg, our new mediation partner from the great state of Washington, to introduce himself and share some information.
I hope you'll still accept me after making that Seahawk reference. I was told that was maybe a dangerous thing to do, so I was just sort of testing the audience here. So again, just a little bit about me, and not a lot, but just so you get a sense of who I am and what I bring to this particular role. So in Washington, I have a company called the Sound Options Group. We are a private conflict engagement firm. And we actually sort of rebranded ourselves as a conflict engagement firm a couple years ago as opposed to an alternative dispute resolution firm, and there are reasons for that. Basically, we provide services in about 5 areas. One, we do mediation. And in our state, we have the contract with our State Department of Education to do all special ed mediation, both Part B and Part C. So we actually designed that system back in 1995. Actually, we designed it with the state in 94, 95, launched it in 95, and so we've had that contract with our Part B agency, our Department of Education, since then. And then in 1997, when mediation became a mandate in the IDEA, we picked up the contract with Part C, which is under our what's called the Department of Early Learning, so we do that mediation. And we also do IEP meeting facilitation. I think we entered into that realm a little bit later, I think, than you folks did, but similar kind of program. Our cohort of mediators and facilitators is basically the same. We've got a roster of about 18 mediators that provide those services across our state. The other context in which we do mediation is primarily workplace and organizational disputes, and so we work with employee-employee, employee-administrator, administrator-administrator work teams. Over the years, our business has gone sort of a couple of different directions. Primarily, though, 85% of our work is in the context of education. So we work in early childhood systems, the public school system, and we also work in higher ed. Is kind of where we do most of our work. And again, all of our work is pretty much in the private sector. We do facilitation, again, a lot like mediation. We facilitate IEPs. I'm also doing, I've done facilitation of contract bargaining and negotiation, facilitation of strategic planning, those kinds of things. We do professional development, and I think that would be a slight difference between our model in Washington and your model here, is that about 50% of my time in my special ed time is actually out teaching dispute resolution skills, engaging challenging conversations, effective teaming, effective IEP processes, those kinds of things, leading through conflict. And so that's a big part of what we do. I do a certain amount of systems design and consulting, and so work not just in Washington, but actually work with Cadre as one of their senior consultants providing services across the country. And then, a piece we added a couple of years ago, which is sort of interesting, is doing a certain amount of coaching. And one of the patterns that we found in the work that we were doing, there's an intersection between leadership, conflict, and change. And what we found is that leaders cause conflict because they initiate change. And most people don't like change, and so they perceive change as a threat, which then brings up the sense of conflict. And many leaders, I find, are conflict averse. And so really finding themselves in that mix is challenging. So that's the work that we do. As you get to know me, you'll know that I'm absolutely passionate about this work. When I took my first mediation training in 1988, I would describe it as an epiphany experience. It's one of those things like, oh, this is like why I'm on the planet. So I absolutely love what I do here and the work that I do. This, however, is my third career. So before I got into the dispute resolution field, I'm actually serving as a guardian ad litem. I used to represent kids during custody disputes, and I had a lawyer I was working with who said, hey, there's this new thing called mediation. You might want to try it out, and that launched me on this career. But before that, I was an educator. So I spent 15 years working in public education, and 11 of those years working in special education. So my background is as a school administrator and a school psychologist. So when we're talking about conflict in special education and conflict in general, in education, bring that orientation. Spent 4 years working at central office around student support services. So did that kind of work. And again, one of the funny things for me is if I look retrospectively at my career, the career path that I've been on, whether I was aware of it or not, the common thread is conflict, and it'll come out. I spent 8 years working with EBD junior high students, who I absolutely love. They're crazy, the teachers are crazy, and it's just a really fun group to work with. But I love that group. So bring that particular background. And then the other thing is I'm also a parent. I have a son who was on an IEP for 3rd grade through high school. He was originally diagnosed with Tourette's. That wasn't a good diagnosis. Secondarily diagnosed with ADD, OCD, all those kind of letters, anxiety. Then when Asperger's came out, it's like, oh yeah, let's call him Asperger's. So we had that diagnosis. And as a special educator, I found a certain level of frustration with the system from that side of the table, so to speak, as a parent. I'm proud to say that my son is 35 years old and has a degree in electrical engineering and is on his own, and I'm very proud of him. But he's had a challenged life, and his mom and I have worked hard to get him through that particular process. And my wife teaches special ed preschool, so I mean, that's it. She also teaches children's yoga, which is her next career. So we built a children's yoga studio in our house, Ladybug Yoga, if you ever want to, take a yoga class. It's really fun. My first career was banking, and so I tell people, where does that fit in? And so I tell people, when you graduate from college with a degree in psychology, it prepares you to do nothing, right? Nothing marketable in that particular field. So I went into banking, but they thought that my degree in psychology would be useful in a role as repo man. So I used to steal cars for a living, okay? So if you want to have a beer and talk about some really fun stories, my mom, who wanted me to go to seminary, had a son who was stealing cars, so that was an interesting conversation. I tell people that the real value in that job for me professionally was it motivated me to go back to graduate school, primarily because I didn't want to die. I mean, it was a scary experience. So that's a little about me and the work that I bring to this. I'm not going to take the whole time I have up here to talk about who I am and what I do. I just want to talk to you a little bit about the vision of what I bring coming into this particular context. And you have to know that the vision I have for working in Wisconsin is born somewhat out of the vision of working in Washington, doing this work for 22 years. I want to be really clear. I have no interest in making this a program that looks like Washington. Okay, I just want to be really clear. But you have to also be aware that that's kind of the context in which I've grown up in this particular field. But what we do here, what we create here, needs to be responsive to who's in this room, the clients that we're serving and what's out there. And yet there are some common themes that run through my thinking about how we organize as a collective group to really serve children and families within Wisconsin. We've had a cohort, a roster I've got people on the roster who started back in 1994 with the initial training with the Justice Center of Atlanta, and they're still doing this work. And so we've formed some really tight relationships. We have a day-and-a-half retreat every year, and in that day-and-a-half retreat, we basically have 3 elements to our retreat, which reflect, to some extent, probably to a significant extent, the values that I bring to that. One, we will focus on some element of special education. Okay, and primarily, as a system, one of the things that we're accountable to is that we have people out doing this work who have expertise, not expertise, knowledge, we have to balance that term, in special education. So for example, in November, our topic is we're going back and revisiting transition services, and really what are the dynamics of transition as they enter into that, what do transition services look like, so we really understand that particular context. We've had presentations on autism, we've had presentations on behavior and all those kinds of things. So one element of our training will always focus on some dimension to special education. The second thing that we always focus on is some element of conflict engagement, alternative dispute resolution, whatever you want to look at that. So again, we've done a range of topics. Our topic this year is we're focusing on restorative justice as a model. And we're doing that for a couple of reasons. One, because a number of people in our cadre, in our roster, are very interested in that. Secondly, I was at a conference recently where I was with Phil Moses, who has just left cadre, but he was presenting that cadre, as sort of the OSEP-funded technical assistance system, is really looking at restorative justice and the applications of restorative justice processes within the context of special education. Is it going to radically change our program? No, and yet it's a model of engaging conflict that is going to be getting a lot of national attention, and we want to be out front, I think, looking at that, learning about that, being part of the national learning scene about restorative justice and where it might be appropriate, how it might be used in this particular context. So that's where we're going to be focusing our energy. You know, we've done presentations on trust. Some of you, I know I did a webinar for cadre last week on trust. So we'll be looking at topics. And just so you know, most of those topics are generated by you. And so I'm going to be looking for you to say, what do you want to focus on? Where are your interests? What are you seeing out there would be of value coming to us as a roster going forward? The third piece of every retreat that we have, which actually is my favorite part, and it probably evolved 15 years ago, is shared learning. We spend 3 or 4 hours with people talking about, and it was sort of like, it was a variation on the question that Jan asked earlier as to, what did you learn in the last year? Okay? And I've got people who are ADR professionals in other contexts, and they're attending conferences, and they're doing work, and they're trying new models, and so they bring that to us as a group. And the model that the context in which I'm trying to create is education a number of years ago adopted a model for learning improvement called creating professional learning communities. I'm not sure to what extent that showed up. It sort of got some real interest. It sort of died out a little bit for some reasons which I won't go into. I still think the model makes sense. It's how do we come together as practitioners and engage in a professional learning community to engage our challenges of practice. And that's really what it's about. How do I come together with colleagues and share what I'm learning so that you can use that learning to engage your challenges of practice? You can share your learning to support me in engaging my challenges of practice. And we really have become a cohort and a cadre that really relies on each other. And so I would like to just begin to plant that seed that we begin thinking about, is there interest? And I'll just tell you, I'm not going to drive this and make this happen, but I'd like to begin advocating that we begin thinking about what that looks like and putting some structure on that. The other piece that I will say is that I do a lot of work on teaming, and one of the models that I use for teaming is really to ask the team to envision the team being very effective. What would the team look like if the team was doing and being what it wanted to be and doing what it wanted to do? And then we begin looking at, okay, well, how do you create a structure to achieve that? So you will be hearing from me over the next couple, probably in the next month, You'll be getting some emails from me where I'm going to be trying to solicit some input from you around that so we can begin collectively thinking about that. Unfortunately, we won't be able to be in the same room, so I'm going to try and facilitate that conversation. And with most teams, I say, okay, if this is the vision of where we are, well, where are we in relationship to that, and what does it take to get us there? And how do we begin to build that team together? So my commitment is not to come in and insert a model of what this looks like. It's for us to jointly create a model that really serves us as a community of ADR professionals doing the work that we're doing. And in doing so, articulating those expectations. What would be our purpose as a team? You know, I'd say the number one purpose for us as a team in Washington, we would say, is it's shared learning. That's what brings us together. It's shared learning about this work that we do that is really hard work, it's challenging work, and if you're like me, it's incredibly meaningful work. I mean, I absolutely love doing work in this particular field. So be thinking about that, be thinking about that notion. The other thing that I will be encouraging, and again, this is not a mandate, okay? But I'm encouraging it also with my roster, saying I'd like you to have a professional development plan for the year. Not because you have to have a professional development plan. I just think it's a good idea to have a professional development plan. It's like, if I'm doing this work, you know, where's my growth? Where am I seeking growth? Our professional development plan for the last 3 years as a roster in Washington has all focused on cultural competence, which we're going to be talking about tomorrow. I think one of the issues that we've struggled with is that we are not a particularly culturally competent system in design and or in delivery, and that we're realizing that there are parts of our state that we are not reaching, who are not utilizing our services, and there are multiple reasons for that, but one of that has to do with our cultural sensitivity as a system to respond to some of those issues. We have a county, actually not a county, it's a zip code in the south end of Seattle, which is the most diverse zip code in the entire United States. Okay, it's one county. I mean, and the number of language spoken in that little county, not that county, that zip code area is somewhere close to 97. Okay, I mean, it's incredibly diverse. And so I think that we'll be talking about this tomorrow morning. It's going to be one of our topics of conversations, is beginning to look at structures to begin reflecting on our own cultural awareness. And we're going to look at cultural competency, cultural fluency, cultural humility, because there's a lot of ways of looking at that, but begin looking at that piece. A piece that we went through a couple years ago is we did a cultural assessment on each of us individually around our own cultural awareness. It was, suffice it to say, it was a very interesting conversation. And we also did sort of a collective cultural map of our cohort. And one of my mediators has her master's in culture and so I mean, just some things I'm thinking about out there. And actually more importantly to me is I'm going to be wanting to hear from you. How can I support you? I am in this place a little far away, but you know, phones are like really easy to use, you know, and things like Zoom or Skype or whatever. My commitment, even though I'm coming from a distance, is to be a resource. And my commitment really is to wanting to get to know each of you personally and professionally, and to be able to be a resource and to, you know, bring you into a conversation where we create this thing together. So that's all I want to say about me, I think, at this point. I guess the other question is any questions you might have about me or the work that we do or the orientation of this work, concerns, questions? Open invitation, if you're ever in Seattle, come over to Bainbridge Island. My office is right next to the Harbor House Pub, so lunch is on me, okay? All right? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break.